With that, we welcome in Kyle Krabs, co-host of the NFL Draft podcast on the Locked On Network, to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Kyle, appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us today, man.
Happy Tuesday. How we doing, guys?
Good, Kyle. Did you hear the craziness from our fans? Were you listening?
I just caught the tail end about anybody not Jerry Jeudy being the ops, which I think is the right frame of mind for the middle of April.
I guess, but I'm just still stunned by the fact that our fans said they'd rather have Jerry Jeudy over Devontae Smith. Now, Devontae Smith's getting paid more, but that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
I would be inclined to agree. I think Devonta Smith's first 3 seasons in the NFL, as for 2 of those not being the primary receiver in the passing game, still putting up the numbers that he has, is probably at this point where I would hedge my bets as far as long-term who the better player would be between the two. But I really like Jerry Jeudy's fit within this Cleveland offense, and I think Browns fans have plenty of reason to be excited. But if you're measuring him against Devontae Smith, give me Devontae Smith.
100%. I think we all agree that Jerry Jeudy has potential that's untapped and that maybe he will reach it here. And so let's go with that. I mean, we thought, pre the Jerry Jeudy trade, we all assumed wide receiver would be the priority for the Browns in this draft. And now maybe not so much. I think the Browns are kind of in a position here where they could go best player available, but maybe picking at, 58? 54?
54.
54.
Maybe picking at 54, maybe that best player will be a wide receiver. What do you think?
Yeah, I really admire the position that Cleveland finds themselves in as far as how they can approach this draft, just because when you're talking about a 4th pass rusher or a 4th wide receiver or a linebacker as being the most pressing needs on your roster, you've got yourself in a pretty ideal situation for coming into a draft, especially one where you don't have a first-round pick, where it takes some of that hurt off of not having that pick because you feel like your starters are pretty well established. And for Cleveland specifically, you hope that you have a little bit better injury fortunes than what that team did last year. You acknowledge the games that team managed to win and say, hey, if the ball bounces our way a couple different places, who knows where we can find ourselves in 2024. And let the board come to you. Every year there's players that fall into the middle and end of the second round who you're surprised to find out are still there. And Cleveland would be wise in my mind just because of how full I think this roster is from top to bottom to take advantage of those opportunities and just draft those players as they come to you.
Kind of along those lines, we did an exercise on the show yesterday using the ESPN Draft Simulator. Who would you take at 54? And Benson came up for me from Texas, and I had no interest really. I hadn't really thought about taking a running back at that spot, but given the uncertainty of Nick Chubb, it's kind of made sense. So I'm sorry, Brooks from Texas, and then Benson from Florida State. Would either one of those guys make sense? Do you think going the running back route for the Browns in the second round?
Well, I think when you consider what was done to Nick Chubb's contract and the fact that he is coming off of an injury, and then Nyheim Hines, Foreman, and John Kelly are in the last year of their deals, and Jerome Ford has 1 year after this. There's a lot of potential attrition in that room after this season. So even if it's not a immediate 2024 high volume ball carrier for you, as you get ready to make some salary cap decisions, as I believe Cleveland's number 1 in the NFL in cash spending right now by like $30 million versus any other team. When you get to next offseason, you can make that strategic decision. So, yeah, I would say running back. I like those 2 that you mentioned. Benson from Florida State and Brooks from Texas are my 2 favorite backs in this class, along with Blake Corum from Michigan. But those 2 guys that you mentioned have the kind of explosiveness and big playability to go with some physicality as they run that I think gives them a little bit more of an edge to Blake Corum, who's a little bit more visions and feel and instincts for me, but doesn't necessarily have the home run hitting ability that those other 2 guys do.
We're a little gun shy about Michigan players.
Understandably,
they've been kicking our ass for the last few years, so I don't know if we want them here, Tyvis. No.
I actually listen.
I'm kidding.
I don't have a problem with Blake Corum, and on top of that, they didn't kick my butt. So anyway, with that,
you got your gold pants.
With that being said, I want to talk about the offensive line. Obviously, we got guys that's aging. Joe Bitonio, Wyatt is always banged up, and then left tackle is another spot. Jed Wills is in the final year. They picked up his 5th-year option. Do you think it's some guys that make sense to be a second-round pick at 54 with left tackle or maybe guard?
I think the intrigue for the offensive line group getting into the range where Cleveland is scheduled to pick is I got about a dozen guys that you feel like could be plug-and-play starters. I think most of the guys getting into that middle second-round range are probably interior guys, whether that's Jordan Morgan from Arizona, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. Those two guys have played tackle in college. I think they're guards at the next level. Tyler Guyton is maybe in that stratosphere as more of a project developmental tackle type. Jackson Powers Johnson feels like he's sliding a little bit. He was a center for Oregon last year, but at 330 pounds has really good open field blocking ability to go with good vertical displacement in the run game. So you're going to have kind of this question of just when the run starts. And if the run starts early, if you get some of these guys that maybe push up in the end of the first round, you might be out of luck if you're hoping for the board to break favorably for you. But if these other positions like wide receivers loaded this year, is that where some of these teams that are playoff contenders go with their first round pick? And if so, that means the tier 2 run on offensive line comes later. I think you could have feasibly somebody with guard tackle flexibility that has at least played both of those spots in college that could make it to you in the mid-50s.
Kyle, I think. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Every different outlet has their perfect fits, perfect scenarios that the draft board fell exactly how Team X would want this player would be available. And PFF this morning put out their perfect fits for day 2 for each AFC North team. Browns fit was linebacker Junior Colston from Michigan. Just curious, what do you think about Colston's potential fit with the Cleveland Browns if he was available on day 2 for Andrew Berry and company to select?
So Colson's a fun player. He's prototypical build. He's got the movement skills to play in space. He's got good sideline-to-sideline range. But if you were going to ask me for a linebacker that I would love to see in Cleveland, I would go with a guy in Peyton Wilson from NC State who has a little bit of a medical question that would allow him to get to that middle of the second round. But Peyton Wilson's tape this year was phenomenal. I think he's a more complete player than what Junior Colson is. It's again, just he's had a couple shoulder injuries. He's had a couple lower body knee injuries, but he's been healthy the last 2 seasons for NC State. And he's got explosive range. His instincts are off the charts. He's not maybe as big and stout deconstructing blocks as what Junior Colson is, but I'd give Wilson the edge in just about every other category. So that's, again, if value on the board is going to fall to you and you're Cleveland and you feel like, hey, this is a potential to address a position of need, and simultaneously it's a player from a value perspective that shouldn't be here but is because of medicals, I'd be a little bit more inclined to take that in stride and take who I think is the better player in Peyton Wilson.
Kyle, a lot of people seem to think now that we'll see 4 quarterbacks go off the board to start the draft. I'm convinced that all the quarterbacks in that group will be busts outside of Caleb Williams.
I'm with you. I don't like this.
I don't like any of the other 3. There is zero. J.J. McCarthy is Kenny Pickett and Mac Jones. Mark it down right now. He's the same quarterback. Daniels and May. All 3 are bust. Buying or selling that?
I would be inclined to buy that less will be successful than will be not successful. I think McCarthy, the thing that he has going for him is if he goes to Minnesota with that supporting cast, I think that would be the kind of environment for a quarterback like that to go in early and not be asked to do too much or have too much pressure because you have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and a good offensive line with a good coaching staff that I think stylistically fits. But teams bust on players just as frequently as players bust on teams. And if you're telling me Drake May, who's all kinds of rough around the edges and likes to win outside of structure, but the consistency and the timing and anticipation and ball placement in his offense, going to New England, throwing to Tom, Dick, and Harry is not a good blend for me for an environment for a young quarterback that needs a stability to be successful. And I'm worried about that with Washington, with all of the football operations changes that they have made. I think Chicago's very well equipped to take a quarterback, but if you're telling me the quarterback's at 2 and 3, I'm kind of leery about it, and then it depends on where that 4th one goes and what his situation is.
Kyle, I see that. I couldn't help but notice that you're a huge Miami Dolphins fan here.
What gave it away?
You know, Anyways, I want to ask you about Tua. Are you comfortable with Tua? I think he's being scheduled to be paid soon. Or should they pay him, or do you think that they should go in another direction? And also, isn't Tyreek Hill retiring after this year? Ain't this his last season?
So Tyreek's got 2 years left on his deal.
Okay,
and his last year he's scheduled to get $46 million in cash. So they'll do something with that before that comes one way or another. Because I think it's interesting. They have not touched his contract this offseason as far as salary cap or restructuring or anything like that. So I think that's at least interesting from Tyreek's perspective. As far as Tua goes, I think they're still trying to find the best optimization of playing to his strengths, which he didn't really get in his first 2 seasons, and that's the unfortunate product of the coaching staff changes. Is now you have to make this financial decision before you've maximized the full term of a rookie quarterback contract. So I think he deserves to get more years in Miami. If you're telling me he's getting the Joe Burrow dollars, that's probably an area where you feel pretty uncomfortable, but we'll see what kind of dollars they ultimately end up coming to. It feels like a matter of when, not if, with that decision. I know he's got great rapport with Mike McDaniel, and the question is what Miami can do to kind of give their offense more pitches when what their bread and butter is doesn't work.
Speaking of Mike McDaniel, Kyle, last year he was known to smoke a joint or two on the sideline. Will he take it up a notch this year? Will there be any cocaine, maybe some crack? I don't know.
It's Miami,
heroin,
too,
heroin.
They like to have a good time in South Beach. I think he'll probably keep it pretty subtle with the jewel, maybe, but that'll probably be it.
All right. Hey, it could have been worse. I was going to ask a question, an inappropriate question with Deshaun Watson versus Tyreek Hill. That would have been even worse. But anyway, back to the draft. Who's a guy in the first round that's not being talked about a ton, like maybe not the big receivers or the quarterbacks? Another guy that you think is going to go top 20 that's under the radar a little bit that you think is going to be a great player?
I think Quinyon Mitchell has a chance to be a total stud at corner from Toledo. And he's kind of the consensus top corner. I know the Alabama kids in Terry and Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry are getting a lot of love, and Nate Wiggins is a great athlete at Clemson. But give me the small school kid in Quinyon Mitchell for the fact that he's big, long, physical, he can run. He went down to the Senior Bowl and showcased that he could play more variety in his coverage to what he was asked to do at Toledo, where he had a chance to play in people's faces and play press. I think he's a universal corner and a guy who can tackle and has a good appetite for the physical components on the perimeter, especially in today's game where you're trying to limit explosive plays and you're playing with those 2 high safeties to kind of cap the offense. The ability to tackle underneath and particularly outside the numbers along the perimeter is essential. And I think Quinyon Mitchell can be a really, really high-level corner at the NFL level, even though he played at Toledo.
I'll go the other way. There's always 1 or 2 dudes left in the green room in the uncomfortable camera shots. Who do you think is in danger of plummeting?
Jackson Powers Johnson had a big-time buzz for being a first-round pick in February and early March. And if you pay attention to the forecasters, a lot of the insiders of the big networks, they've cooled on his name a lot. And I think for the casual fan that was so used to in mock draft season, putting Jackson Powers Johnson to Seattle at 16 or Jacksonville at 17 or Miami at 21 or Pittsburgh at 20, like you have this laundry list of teams from 16 to 24, Dallas at 24, that Jackson Powers Johnson was just, they need the center, go ahead, lock him in. I wouldn't be surprised if he's if he isn't the first center off the board with Zach Frazier from West Virginia. And then potentially if a team were to draft Graham Barton and intend to play him at center, which he did early in his career at Duke, you could potentially see Jackson Powers Johnson slide into the middle of the second round.
Everybody, I'm from Ohio State, so I got to ask you this question. Everybody knows about Marvin Harrison, but another guy that I want to talk about is Mike Hall Jr., the defensive tackle. Where do you see him? Because I know coming into the draft or coming into the offseason, he was like 3rd or 4th round pick, but then he did well at the Senior Bowl. Where do you have him at right now?
I think he's a fringe 2-3 type of player where this kind of second tier of interior defensive linemen after Johnny Newton in Illinois and Byron Murphy from Texas, it's kind of no man's land where what's your flavor? What do you want? And if you want maybe a little bit of an undersized penetrator, but a guy that has some length to his game, and I think has showcased pretty good pass rush menu for the ways in which he can beat you with his hands to get penetration in the pocket, even if necessarily the sack numbers weren't where you would want them to be for a top pass rusher on the inside. I think he's in that conversation for a tier 2 guy. And I know Fisk from Florida State ran the 4.78 at 300 pounds, so everybody's oohing and ahhing over that. But he's got like the 12th shortest arms in combine history for an interior defensive lineman at 30-inch arms. So that kind of stuff does matter a little bit for the timing, particularly inside, and how and when you can throw your hands, and what's your sphere of influence to be able to have that timing instead of letting offensive linemen get up into your chest. And I think Hall's got a big edge there. And I think he has more variety of ways in which he can beat you. He is maybe a little bit of a pass rush specialist early, but I think he can develop into a 3-down interior defensive lineman. And with the athletic ability that he has and then some length and pass rush skills, those guys usually don't wait too long. So I think he's a fringe second-round guy.
The Browns should take him. There it is.
Yeah, third round.
They should take
Second
him
round?
and switch him and Ika. There you go. That's what you should do.
Switch him.
Yeah, like
Cuddy.
rotate them.
9 days, 8 hours away from the draft finally being upon us. Kyle, appreciate it, man. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. It was good talking ball with you.
Yep.